What's up, Georgia? Are we feeling a big win for Donald J. Trump right here in the state of Georgia?
Well, it's so great to be here with all of you. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have a good conversation, some laughs, and hopefully talk about some of the issues that you care about. We so appreciate your coming out. First, I'm going to start with Lara, the head of the RNC, who is doing an amazing job leading the RNC this election cycle, focusing on election integrity, which I'm sure is such an important issue for so many of you. And we just had some big news here in Georgia, in Fulton County, breaking just a few minutes ago. You may not have heard of it. So, Lara, talk to us about what's going on.
Well, I think we can all agree, Karoline, that we never want to repeat the mistakes of the 2020 election ever again, right? We want a free, fair, and transparent election. We want all legal votes counted and only legal votes counted. And so we have put together a very aggressive election integrity operation at the RNC. We've been working hard. If you've heard me on TV at all, you're probably sick of me talking about it, but it is the most important thing that I think we could do. So yesterday, we got notice at the RNC that the Board of Elections in 5 counties here in Georgia, Fulton County, Gwinnett, Cobb, DeKalb, and Chatham, we're all going to extend hours today to allow people to continue to drop off their absentee ballots. Now, we felt that this was somewhat against the law and did not go with the rules that they had put in place initially. So we said, we're not sure about that. And they said, no, we're going to keep them open. Oh, and also, you guys are not allowed to have any observers as these ballots are coming in. So we said, oh, really? So we filed a lawsuit. Yeah, I think this is our 136th lawsuit from the RNC this election cycle. And we pushed back very hard on them not allowing our observers in the room. I am happy to report observers have been allowed every time a vote is coming in. But I think the bigger conversation, Karoline, is truly about election integrity. And it is our hope at the RNC that this election in 2024 goes to reestablish trust in our electoral process. It's foundational to who we are as a country. And the lack of trust that so many people across America have post-2020 is very problematic. So our message has been clear. If you are a person who is going to cheat in an election, we will find you, we will track you down, and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law.
And Lara, we were on a press call this week explaining to the fake news media the efforts that we are making at the Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee to ensure the integrity of the elections. And you said something that was so profound, and I've been using it in my media interviews.
Oh, excuse me, I'm flattered.
You said, we are protecting the vote. It's not just for Republicans, and this is something that the media gets wrong. We are fighting to protect the integrity of this election for Republicans and Democrats and all Americans, period.
And by the way, we've also reached across the aisle to our friends over at the DNC, and we have asked them to join us in our pursuit of election integrity. Now, we have yet to hear back, but we still have 70-some hours to go, so we'll let you guys know on that.
And big wins in the Commonwealth of Virginia and also in Pennsylvania as well.
Yes, that's right. So Pennsylvania, you guys might have seen, yesterday we were proud to announce that mail ballots do have to have dates on them. The Democrats have pushed back 5 times on this and fought against us on this, and 5 times we've had to push back and file a lawsuit and say, no, if you're turning in a mail ballot, we need a date on that mail ballot because we need to know when it was sent and we need to know when it was received, and we got a big win on that yesterday. You also maybe saw, Yeah, it's about protecting the integrity of an election, and every person should want that, whether you're voting, Karoline, Republican, Democrat, or third-party candidate. We also were very pleased that we got 3 extra days of voting in Bucks County. That's one of the collar counties outside of Philadelphia. That was a county in 2016. Donald Trump won. Joe Biden won it in 2020. And we would like to win it back again. So we are very excited that we now have outpaced the Democrats in our voter registration there. There are more Republicans there registered than Democrats. But a lot of the locations were, imagine this, Karoline, closing down early during their early vote period. So what did we do? We filed a lawsuit.
And we won.
And we won. And they got 3 extra days of voting there. And you guys probably saw in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin who, by the way, turned Virginia red, and we're trying to do that again right now. That's where Donald Trump is, at a rally in Virginia right now. He wanted to make sure that people who self-identified as non-citizens were not going to have the ability to vote. It turns out the Supreme Court agreed with him, and indeed, those non-citizens are not going to have an opportunity to vote. So big election integrity wins going on. We're watching.
Well, aside from election integrity, which, as Lara said, has been the utmost priority of President Trump, the campaign, the RNC, we are now in the final days, and we've seen a real shift in the closing message of the Harris campaign. I think it's safe to say the joy has left the campaign headquarters at Kamala HQ. I can tell you there's a lot of joy at our HQ down in West Palm Beach, Florida.
And in a garbage truck, by the way.
Exactly.
You know.
So who here heard Mark Cuban call Republican women weak and dumb? We have a lot of beautiful, strong, and intelligent women on this stage, don't we? And every one of them responded personally with a video to Mark Cuban's comments. So I'd like to start with you, Danica, if we could kick it to the end. Talk to us. How did you feel when Mark Cuban called you weak and dumb?
This is because I have my arms out, isn't it? That
Yes,
you went
girl.
to me first.
Show them off now.
Not so weak. Of course, we know that weak is not necessarily the strength that we have in our muscles, although it does help. It shows discipline and commitment. So it is something, but look, I think it was a really unintelligent comment, and I feel like there's such desperation on the other side. And so to encompass all women that support him and say that they are weak or unintelligent is just wildly wrong. And or Joe Biden calling everyone garbage that supports him. But I was just having this conversation maybe within the last week, and I think I might have even posted something about it, maybe on Instagram, but I know nobody sees that because I get shadow banned on that one, so I think X from now on. But I was just, right, exactly. I was just having this conversation and posted something about the fact that the people that surround Donald Trump are always such strong women. They are excellent at what they do. They are articulate. They're amazing human beings. And so it's very ironic that he would go and say something like that not long after, because it's just the opposite. And I feel like that's what you see from the Democratic Party. It feels like such a party of hypocrisy right now. Literally, they say that we are the weak ones. We are the strong ones. And that's what we're here to show you.
Well, very true. And thank you, Danica, for joining us on the campaign trail this year. It's been so great to have you and have your voice. And nobody knows the hypocrisy of the Democrat Party arguably more than Tulsi Gabbard, who is officially a Republican.
Aloha. Thank you for the sign. It's so true. I mean, what we're seeing play out now is just what I experienced for many, many years. I remember going back to 2016 when Hillary Clinton was running for president, and I was a vice chair of the DNC. I resigned so that I could campaign against her and warn the American people about how dangerous she would be as commander-in-chief. And over I got asked by people in the media, people in the party leadership, how dare you, as a woman, not support this person who could break through the glass ceiling and be the first female president? And my response to every person who asked me this question is, I'm offended that you're reducing me and my intelligence to my body parts. I experienced over and over in 2020 when I was a candidate for president on the Democratic ticket, how really when it comes right down to it, Danica said it perfectly, it is the hypocrisy for a party that claims to stand for women, that claims to be the feminists, that claims to want to lift up women in every possible way. Turns out they only like a certain kind of woman, and that certain kind of woman is one who will spout their talking points, toe the line, and do whatever it is the powers that be in the Democrat Party and the Washington establishment want you to be. So knowing that, one of the many reasons I left the party, I was never going to fit in that environment, but it shouldn't be a surprise to us that they chose Kamala Harris to be their nominee, because she is doing exactly that. She is reading the talking points, literally, gets lost when the teleprompter freezes and stops working, And it is the continuation of the kind of figurehead political leaders that they seek out, people who they know that they can control. And this is, to me, what's so dangerous about a potential Kamala Harris presidency. And I can say this as a person who continues to serve in uniform in the Army, as a veteran of multiple deployments. It's quite terrifying to think of a Kamala Harris as commander-in-chief who is being fed orders by someone that voters never elected, number one. And number two, someone who will feel the need to mask her insecurity and weakness in order to try to project strength and use my brothers and sisters in uniform as the means of doing so. So it's those, among many reasons, why I'm so committed to helping get President Trump reelected and sent back to the White House.
Before we get off Mark Cuban really quickly, where are all the ladies in the room today? Okay, ladies for Trump. Let's just say this. It takes a very smart and a very strong woman to look past the lies of the mainstream media, to look past the manipulation of the Democrats and their allies, Hollywood, all of it, to do the research, to find out about a candidate and make your informed decision as a woman, as an American citizen, and say, yes, I am voting for Donald J. Trump. So congrats to all the ladies in the room today.
Governor Sanders, I'd like to give you the opportunity to respond to Mark Cuban as well.
You know, the part I find to be so unbelievable and so laughable is that this is from a party and a group that can't even tell you what a woman is, yet they
Very
want to
true.
attack those of us who are sitting up here. To me, it is so absurd for them to make a comment like that. But at the same time, I'm actually kind of glad that they did, because I think it's really important for America to hear how they really feel before you go and cast your vote. Because they're telling us all of the quiet things out loud. They're calling us garbage. They're attacking our intelligence, our strength. And nothing could be further from the truth in the names that they're calling. And the reason that they have to do that is because they know that their policies, their ideas, their record are nothing but a list of failures. When you compare what the Biden-Harris administration has done to what Donald Trump was able to do in 4 years, it is remarkable. We had secure borders. We had a strong economy. We had stability around the world. Now nothing that Donald Trump spent 4 years building have they continued. In fact, they've spent the last 4 years destroying it and tearing down all of the good things. But the good news, Donald Trump's going to win on Tuesday. And America will be reminded what a difference it means to have a true, strong leader who actually loves our country and is willing to stand up and fight for it. And nobody will do that better and more and with a greater sense of mission than Donald Trump when he wins next week.
Governor Noem?
You know, I was in a meeting working on our state budget with all of my executive team when one of them came in and said, "Did you just hear what Mark Cuban said?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And they brought in a video and showed it to me and said that President Trump never has strong or intelligent women around him. And I immediately thought of Melania. And I thought of, she's one of the smartest, most intelligent, strongest women that I've ever known. I thought of Lara. I thought of Karoline. All the women that I have seen that have been around President Trump, that he respects their opinion and he has always given women the chance to be elevated. I have talked to so many people that worked for him back in the 80s and the 90s, women that he gave them the first opportunity to be a supervisor or to get a position that they'd always been overlooked for before. But President Trump saw something in them and gave them the chance to be leaders and to step up. And I tell people that, listen, as governor, he let me do my job. I've had the chance to be governor under President Trump and under Joe Biden. And under President Trump, he let me be a problem solver. He let me take care of my people, followed the Constitution, let me figure out what our problems were, and he helped me solve them. And day one, when President Biden got in that White House, I went on defense. I was on defense just trying to protect my people and their liberties. And so when I was watching that video, I also noticed how emotional Mark Cuban was. Did you see that? He was super emotional and almost like he was panicking. And I realized this is how the entire Democratic Party feels right now. This is how the machine feels, because they are panicking because they're losing, and they see President Trump out on the campaign trail having fun. He's having fun because he's spending time with the American people, the backbone of this country, and he is relating to them on a level that Kamala Harris never can. She can't relate to these people. She doesn't even try because she thinks they're better than the average American. So I oftentimes when I talk to crowds, and especially people that care about politics and government, I tell them not to be offended anymore. We kind of live in a country that's addicted to being offended, right? I mean, we all love to be offended and blow each other up, and I always say, you know, when you get offended by someone, you're the one who's picking it up and carrying it around with you. And then you're the one who's carrying the burden. So you have the opportunity every day to, when people offend you, just to let it lay there and walk by it. Because the fact that we don't talk to people anymore is one of the reasons that we aren't winning the hearts and minds of people often when we have political discussions, right? We need to listen to them. But when I saw Mark Cuban say that, I was like, I'm gonna own this offense. Because there are more women voters in this country than men, and we stick together. He didn't just call me weak and dumb. He called every woman that would dare to think for themselves and vote for a president that has a proven track record of protecting us on the world stage and also giving us the ability to take care of our businesses and our kids and our grandkids. Because we would think on our own that that would be somebody we'd want to vote with, suddenly we were weak and dumb. And that was offensive to me. So let's make sure that when we're out there talking to people, that we're looking at really the two candidates and the two parties and the machine of the Democrats that they have that is one party think, group think, everybody fall in line. In fact, if you saw President Obama when he was talking to that group of campaign folks at that headquarters, you remember what he said? Black men must not be voting for her because she's a woman. And I thought, for his thought to be, the only reason that you're not voting for her must be because she's a woman? I thought that was a horrible thing for him to immediately default to. Maybe they didn't like her policies. Maybe they don't like what she's done the last 4 years. But for him, because he's already pulling all the strings behind the scenes and controlling what Kamala Harris says and does, he thought, what could possibly be going on here except she's a woman? So we're getting a window into what they really think of us. We're getting a view into how the Democratic Party and leadership thinks of women. And I've got 2 girls, and I've got grandbabies and granddaughters, and I don't want them growing up in a country that has people like that in leadership. I want them to have a leader that respects them.
I'd just like to thank The View for all of their excellent content that they've provided to us. They've really shown us who they are, as you've said. So whether Mark Cuban thinks that there are no good women or whether Kamala says that she has nothing else to offer than the last 4 years, we now know.
They are writing the script for us, that's for sure.
I would also say to Mark Cuban, watch how this group of smart, strong women gets Donald Trump elected 3 days from now.
I think it's important to point out, like, this is not an isolated thing coming from Mark Cuban. As much as I don't know if they're trying to distance themselves from his comments at all, but I don't know about you guys, but I found it pretty offensive when I heard Michelle Obama and many other people from the Kamala Harris campaign telling women to lie to their husbands.
There's a commercial about that.
There's
literally an
commercial
ad,
about it.
yeah.
Like, this is their narrative, is basically that saying but not saying, you're too weak to have an open dialogue and conversation with your boyfriend or your husband or your partner, so you should just sneak around their back and smile and lie to them about who you're voting for. I found it completely demeaning and something that reinforces exactly what Mark Cuban is saying.
As though any woman, all women are out there like hiding it from their husbands. No, we're proud. We're voting for Donald J. Trump if that's okay with everybody.
That's right.
Not hiding anything.
So Danica made me remember a conversation I had with a fake news reporter from the Washington Compost, as I like to call them, on my drive from the airport over here. And she talked about Kamala Harris's conversation on The View, where she was asked, what would you have done differently over the past 4 years? And she said, not a single thing.
Nothing comes to mind.
Not the Afghanistan debacle, not the open border invasion of more than 20 million illegal people from all over the world, not her tie-breaking votes in the Senate to cause the worst inflation crisis in a generation. The Washington Compost reporter is writing a story on our closing message. And they said, well, you guys really seem to be trying to tie Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. And I said, excuse me. I said, Kamala Harris is tying herself to Joe Biden. She is writing the script for us. We are just pushing advertisements that are revealing the truth, because a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for a continuation of the despicable policies under the Harris-Biden regime of the past 4 years. And it leads me to my next question. How amazing is it that we have two wonderful Republican women governors sitting on this stage right now? Governor Sanders and Governor Noem. And Governor Noem, you mentioned you have served in South Dakota under the Harris-Biden regime and the very successful Trump administration. I think it'd be interesting if both of you could point out how you have seen the policies of this administration in Washington, D.C. impact your constituents at the state level, how the heavy hand of the federal government has hurt your state. Governor Noem.
You know, when President Trump was in the White House, I was so thrilled because I was passionate about tax reform. And when he got sworn in as President of the United States, we had the chance for 2 years to work on a bill that he came in and finalized and helped us negotiate and get it through the Senate and got it signed into law that put thousands of dollars back into the American people's pockets, that they could make the best decisions on how to spend those money and dollars for their kids and for their grandkids. So that was fantastic for me to be a part of that. And when I first had a meeting with President Trump, I remember I was a brand new governor, and we came in and some of the new senators and new governors were having a meeting with him, and he was going around the table. I was sitting next to him, and so I knew I was going to be last. And people were asking him what they needed help with. What were some problems that he could help us solve? And I remember watching as we went around the table, some people were talking kind of long, and that kind of irritated him. You could see he was kind of squirming a little bit. And then some people were asking for 10 things. You know, well, I need you to fix this, this, and this, and then can you do that? So I thought, okay, by the time he gets to me, I'm going to have 3 things, but one I'm going to hit really hard, because I just know, and I'm going to be succinct. And when he got to me, he said, Kristi, what do you need help with? And I said, well, sir, I really need help with some trade agreements. And then we negotiated a few that really penalize our producers and our commodity owners, our farmers, but also our manufacturers. So if you would help me get free trade, not free trade, but fair trade deals with our companies in other countries so that we can engage with them and not get penalized, he said that would be fantastic. I'm on it. Absolutely. We need to get our products made here in the United States. We need to protect our food supply and grow it here and make sure they can be utilized by our people here. He said, what else did you need? I asked him for another policy in our Black Hills. I needed better lumber policy so we could actually maintain our forests and not deal with wildfires like California is when our forests aren't maintained. And he said, I'll get that done for you. And what's the third thing? I said, sir, I need fireworks back at Mount Rushmore.
And I bet he loved that.
Yeah, he goes, what? I said, well, we've always, every year, been able on the 4th of July to have fireworks at Mount Rushmore. And those TV shots of Mount Rushmore, a monument to great leaders, celebrating the freedom and independence that we have here as Americans, I said, but as soon as President Obama came into office, he took it away from us. And I'd like to have it back, because I think it's a reminder not just to the people in this country, but to the whole world what America stands for. And he said, I'm going to help you get that done. That's fantastic. She wants fireworks. We're going to get fireworks. I got a little worried because every time I saw him for a year after that, every time he looked at my face, he'd say, how's our fireworks going? Are we getting our fireworks? And I was like, oh my goodness, he thinks all I want is fireworks. I actually wanted some other things, but he got it done. Did you guys see the wonderful celebration We had July 3rd. And so it's great to have a president that really wanted to help other leaders solve their problems for their people. And when Joe Biden came in, it was like a 180-degree change. It was unbelievable. On day one, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, which was 11,000 jobs for us. The equipment was already set up in South Dakota. We had the pipe all laid out. All it had to be done was put in the ground and used so that we could move our oil in a safer, more responsible way for our environment and for our people, and he canceled that immediately. And from then on, I've been involved in federal lawsuits on, can I still put male and female on our birth certificates in South Dakota? Do I have to do transgender surgeries on my inmates that are in my prisons? These are the things the federal government sues me over because I want to keep saying male and female. I don't believe that taxpayers should have to pay for optional transgender surgeries when someone's incarcerated. And so it's dozens of those types of situations. Instead of being on offense solving problems, now I'm on defense just trying to protect my people.
Well, we're going to go on offense again in January 2025. Governor Sanders?
I have to say it was an incredible fireworks show. So I got the opportunity to go with my kids in person, and as anything in Donald Trump true fashion, it's going to be the biggest and the best, and it absolutely was. So, but I think one of the biggest differences in having the Biden-Harris administration versus the Trump administration is during the Trump administration, he was fighting against our actual adversaries and our enemies. He was holding China's feet to the fire, standing up to Iran, standing up to Russia. And now, instead, Republican governors are having to fight against our own government. And that shouldn't happen in America. We shouldn't have to, as governors, pick up the slack where the federal government is dropping the ball. Both of us have sent members of our Arkansas and South Dakota Guard to the southern border because we have a president who refuses to do his job. That never happened under Donald Trump's administration. Not only did we have a secure border, but we were making a huge difference and a lot of progress and movement. Great trade deals. You weren't seeing chaos and instability around the world like you're seeing take place in the Middle East. We didn't get walked all over by China like you're seeing take place right now. We actually had a president who was fighting for us instead of fighting against us. And nothing could be more different than what we have in this current administration. So now Republican governors are having to pick up the slack. We're passing the tax cuts. We're implementing universal school choice. I was the first governor in the country to kick China off of our farmland in our state and make them pay for it. And when Donald Trump was in the White House, he was leading on those things. Now we don't have a partner. We have somebody we're having to constantly battle. And that makes a real difference. We need somebody in the White House who loves our country and who understands what makes it so incredibly great. The reason America is the greatest country on the face of the planet is because it's the freest country that the world has ever known. And we no longer have a government that understands that. Not only do they not understand it, but they're not willing to do anything to protect it. I want to make sure that my kids and every kid growing up in America gets to enjoy the same freedoms that I do. But now we have a government that's working hard to take them away instead of fighting to protect them. We will not have that any longer when Donald Trump steps back into the White House. We will have a fighter for all Americans.
You know, we're talking so much about how Donald Trump is going to do such a good job and bring the country back, but I truly believe it could be better than it's ever been. Make America Great Again just works for MAGA, but it's more than that. It's more than MAGA. And recently I just saw Bobby doing an interview, and he said that Trump has not let him down on any promise since he's been engaged within the party. Not let him down, and in fact over-delivered. And that when he got into office, he didn't really know what he was doing yet. You can imagine, like, being president for the first time. You really don't know what to expect. But he knows now, and he knows who all the bad guys are. I was just in Phoenix a couple of nights ago watching him for Tucker's last show on his tour, and he said, I think I know who all the bad guys are now. And so he's going to come in there and he's going to be able to do it better than he's ever done it, which I think is the most exciting thing with the most talented list of people.
So, Danica, you just brought up how President Trump says it often. He was not a DC guy, he was a New York guy. Lara, you were there at the very beginning, the golden escalator ride. Talk to us about what this transition has been like for you and your family. 3 days left on a really 10-year journey. I'm sure it's a little bittersweet for you. You've traveled the country and met so many amazing people, and you're a household name, and America loves you, by the way. Don't we love Lara Trump and her family? What has it been like, and how does it feel in this moment now that you have 3 days left on this ride?
It's a great question. Nothing prepares you for something like this. I will tell you, we had a conversation. We had dinner as a family. This was a few nights before the famous golden escalator ride. And that night, my father-in-law sat down with our whole family and he said, listen, this is something that's real. I'm definitely going to do this. But I think you guys need to appreciate what this means too, because it's not just about me. It's about all of you. And if I do this the way it needs to be done, they are going to come after me, and they're also going to come after you. And I think you guys need to understand what that means and make sure everybody feels good about this. And of course, we're all like, yeah, how bad could this possibly be?
Oh, boy.
And then, of course, we saw immediately how bad it could possibly be. And to have really felt like I've been in the trenches with my father-in-law, our entire family. It's not just us, it's all of you. Our entire movement it's not a movement of politics. It's really like you guys are our family. And so that's why it is, Karoline, bittersweet. For 9 years, we have been out there fighting alongside each and every one of you. And I will be so proud on Tuesday night when we re-elect Donald Trump as our 47th president. But for me personally, look, I think I probably grew up like most people in America did. And I can tell you that in my wildest dreams, I never imagined I would have the last name Trump, let alone all the rest of this, for sure. And so it's just been the most incredible experience of my entire life. I am so honored to be by this man's side because he went into it eyes wide open, truly understanding what he was going to do and what it was going to take for this country to do the right things for this country, to give this country back to we, the people, to reestablish our strength on the world stage, all of it. And he did it the first 4 years he was in the White House. And to Danica's point, you're right. He went in there, and I think he naively thought, look, I'm a businessman. I know how business works. It's fast. It moves quickly. Whenever you're a decisive person, you make actions happen very fast and things get done. And the federal government does not work that way, obviously. So he had to adapt, and he had to learn, and he didn't know all the people to place in these positions, but he knows now. And I'll tell you something else. You want to know the reason why they're terrified to have Donald J. Trump back in Washington, D.C.? Not only did he learn all the good people, but to Danica's point, he learned all the bad people. He exposed a lot the first time around. And honestly, the swamp is terrified and quaking in its boots because they know when Donald J. Trump is back at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the jig is up, it's over, it's all done. We're flushing them right down the drain.
And they are so afraid that they have literally weaponized our justice system against your father-in-law and against the former president of the United States. And Lara, I know you and I, many a days, were in that very dirty New York City courtroom during
very uncomfortable benches, by the way, the worst.
The Alvin Bragg trial in Manhattan this summer. President Trump was confined to a courtroom for 6 weeks. And I think part of it was not just because they truly want to imprison him off of baseless charges and accusations. They wanted to see if they could tamper his spirit. I think that's what it was, psychological games they were trying to play, and little did they know, they picked the wrong guy. I don't know when they're going to stop underestimating him, but going in that courtroom with him every single day and seeing him fight against Alvin Bragg, the entire justice system in New York, the mainstream media that was pushing out fake headlines, and going in there with a smile and more determined than ever to fight and fight for truth. and then he was falsely convicted, and he still continued to fight, and it's amazing to watch. And Tulsi, I know this is one of the many reasons you've become a Republican, is watching the deep state and the weaponized system of our justice, and you've been a victim of it as well. Can you speak to that, please?
You know, there are a lot of people who, unfortunately, will just read the headlines, and it's something you deal with all the time, Karoline, as you deal with the media, is they just throw out these sound bites. Oh, so many felony charges and this, and that, without ever actually looking below the surface to see how one by one they're being tossed out, and they are being exposed. I'm not the only one, but there are many people who have also been the targets of political retaliation from the Harris-Biden, accurately called the regime. The very next day after I did an interview warning the American people about how dangerous Kamala Harris would be as commander-in-chief, as I talked about, it's the same thing I said back in 2019. It was true then and it's true now. The very next day, I was placed on a little-known secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. I didn't realize it at the time. What I experienced was when I traveled, and I'm on a different plane almost every day, going to a different city or a different state, and every day that I traveled, I had to go through this very, very in-depth screening at TSA. They would mark my boarding pass with an SSSS on it, and that meant when you go up to show your ID, as you go through TSA, they would shut down an entire lane of the TSA line, which usually takes, a good 10 or 15 minutes, and then push me through. It also happened to my husband, by the way, guilty by association, I guess. And then really thoroughly search every single item on my body and every single item in my carry-on bag. We noticed there were drug dogs sniffing around. They would swipe all of the electronics, turn them on, make sure they were on, swipe them for bomb, explosive residue, and so on and so on and so on. This went on over and over, and every time they're like, you've been randomly selected. No, there is no way. So after about a week and a half of this, there were federal air marshal whistleblowers who came forward and presented evidence showing that I had been placed on this domestic terror watch list, that TSA had what they called an active targeting package focused on me, and that they had assigned at least 3 or 4 federal air marshals to surveil me from the point I got to an airport, through the flight, and then to the point where I actually left the airport. To this day, this has not been addressed by anyone in the administration. I did an interview with Dana Bash shortly after this happened and brought this up. She's like, oh, I've never heard about this. Pretty convenient. She said,
of course you haven't, Dana.
Exactly. She said we should follow up on this. That was like 2 months ago. We sent a message yesterday saying, what happened to the follow-up, CNN? The point is, the propaganda media is working in force to push the Kamala Harris narrative that President Trump and those of us who support him, those of us who are exercising our right to free speech, those who may be peaceful pro-life protesters, anyone who criticizes their government is seen as a traitor, as an opponent, as someone who must experience their retaliation, sending the message that if you go against us, you may be next. And that to me is again, going back to the hypocrisy. These are coming from people who claim to stand for freedom, who claim to stand for democracy. Kamala Harris says she is the defender of democracy, that they protect the rule of law, but we have to recognize that every one of the things that they say they stand for, she says that they're the ones who secure the border. The list goes on. In every single one of these instances, it's an intentional distraction tactic, hoping that we don't actually pay attention to the fact that they are doing the very things that they accuse Donald Trump of doing.
Always. And how shameful that the regime, as we call it, went after you, a veteran of this country who honorably served in our military. It's despicable.
It was interesting. At one of these stops, I asked, I was talking to the TSA supervisor. I had used my military ID that day to go through TSA, so he's holding it in his hand. He's like, this doesn't make sense. He had no idea who I was or involved with politics or nothing. All he saw was the ID card, and he's like, you're in the military. you should not be getting this treatment. I said, I know.
You said, Google me, buddy. You'll understand why.
But the interesting thing was that he said that, they get people coming through who get this treatment every now and then, but he noticed how after President Trump was elected, that there were a number of people that he knew personally who never had this screening before, and all of a sudden, when they spoke out for President Trump, they were now part of the random selection. Exactly. It is intimidation, and it is interference and an undermining of our democracy. And this is, and I want to hear from Danica because she's never voted before in her life. She just voted for Donald Trump. But I'd love to hear from you, Danica, because I know there are a lot of people that I meet along the way who feel hopeless, who don't vote because you feel like your vote doesn't matter, your voice won't be heard. But I think there are a lot of people maybe who are in your situation that you could speak to who aren't sure how they're going to vote in this election.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry for all of that. Can you believe that she's being treated like this as someone that serves in our country?
She's a lieutenant colonel right now.
Exactly. Look, this is the first year I voted. I was a race car driver, and
In a badass one.
I didn't have a lot of time to put forth towards politics or understanding it all. But look, I'm a person of pride and integrity and honesty. And I mean, when I was a kid, I had that USA jacket with the flag on the back and the USA down the arm. If I wore that now, I'd be making a political stance. That's wild. I have a shirt on that says Proud American. I'm making a political stance. That's wild. And so in December, I went to an event that Charlie Kirk put on in Phoenix called AmFest. And you guys know who Charlie Kirk is? He's done incredible things for voting, for kids in colleges and high schools. He has chapters everywhere. This man works so hard. He talks so much, he literally sucks on lozenges all day, every day. You'll notice if you see him talking these days. But I went to his event in December with my sister, and I posted some pictures afterwards and said, I love this country. And the backlash from that was so shocking to me that I could say something like, I didn't actually even say, make America great again. Strategically, I just said, I love this country. So what that did, because I'm a person of integrity and I'm a person of pride and I'm proud of this country, I've lived somewhere else. I lived in England for 3 years. I've traveled the world. I know how good it is here. In fact, I had an argument with somebody that lives in another country who was saying, I was having an argument about illegal immigration, and he's like, yeah, but you have an amazing country. People should be able to start a life, have a life there. I'm like, and we should pay for it? What if I came into your country and you gave me a card full of money for groceries and somewhere to live and a cell phone? Is that fair? But that's how great this country is. People see it as the most amazing country that everyone wants to be a part of. And as I think Charlie Kirk pointed out one time, there was somebody he talked to. Have you seen his little chats with the colleges? Somebody said they were going to leave if Donald Trump was elected, and he said, and he said he didn't want to be in this country if he got elected. And then he said, well, are you going to leave? And he's like, no. He's like, that's right, because it's the only country that even if you hate the president or you hate whatever's going on, you're still never going to leave. You can hate this country and still want to stay. So it lit a fire when people had this strong opinion of me saying I love this country, because I do. And I want to be able to wear that jacket. I wish I still had it. And I want to be able to wear a Proud American shirt. And I want it to mean that we're all united and that we are just proud Americans, not that I'm a proud Republican. I also have a tattoo of an American flag on my back. I'm not going to show you, but that's how much I love this country.
I love it. Well, since you mentioned the topic of illegal immigration, this is arguably the #1 issue in this election. Inflation and immigration, it's what we hear everywhere we go. Who's excited to have a secure border again? And every state has become a border state in this country because of Kamala Harris's open border invasion. And what they've done at the southern border is arguably the worst dereliction of duty by any president and vice president in the history of our country. And I want to share a quick story because I know that in Georgia, you have suffered the tragic consequences of illegal immigrant crime with the slaughtering of a beautiful young woman, Laken Riley. And it's so despicable that Kamala Harris wants to be the first female president of the United States and has never taken the time to reach out to her mourning family, has never taken the time to express her condolences or to change the very policies that led to that brutal death. And sadly, Laken is not the only one. We know Rachel Morin in Maryland, Jocelyn Nungare, the 12-year-old in Texas, who was brutally raped and killed at the hands of someone who should have never been in this country in the first place. And I've seen President Trump, and I know everyone else on this stage has too, grieve with mourning mothers and fathers of illegal immigrant crime. And it was here in Georgia, just a few days after Laken's death, where we held a rally. President Trump personally picked up the phone to call that family in the wake of unimaginable tragedy. I'm a new mother. I had a baby 3 months ago. I can't imagine what this family has gone through. Thank you. I can't imagine what this family has gone through. And President Trump takes time out of his busy schedule to call mourning mothers and fathers and family members of the tragedies that are caused by Kamala Harris's terrible policy. And Kamala Harris doesn't give a damn. I hate to say it, but she doesn't. And so I'd like, especially the governors and Lara, who has seen these conversations take place, talk about that side of your father-in-law, the compassion and the sympathy that he has for families who have suffered the worst of the worst tragedies in this country.
Yeah, and it's not just illegal immigration. It's, he came right here to Georgia in the wake of Hurricane Helene and wanted to check in with people here on the ground. He went to the western part of North Carolina. And I've seen him in these moments. It's when the cameras are off. It's when no one's around. And he really obviously does care about this country. Look, he is putting his life on the line to save America. I can tell you, Donald Trump never needed this job. This was a guy who was known around the world, had made his fortune, had fame. He was a household name, and he had a great life. And everybody seemed to really like Donald Trump. And he knew getting in a race like this, what that would ultimately mean. I don't know that he knew it would get this bad, but he knew what it would mean. And you've seen time after time, you've seen impeachments, you've seen indictments, you've seen a mugshot right here in Fulton County, which is the greatest one we've ever seen in the history of the world, by the way. Thanks, Fanny.
Phony Fanny.
You've seen 2 assassination attempts on this man's life, and he's still in this race and he's still fighting. And it's because he really loves this country. He really, truly cares about the American people. And, it's funny because I will never forget, this is a story that I don't tell many, but I'll never forget what I saw right after the last time my father-in-law left the White House in 2021. We flew down to Florida for the last time on Air Force One. It was very somber, very quiet. Obviously, it was a pretty tough time for all of us, probably for all of you as well, but no one more than my father-in-law. And he asked us all to have dinner with him that night. And as soon as he came to dinner, we were all kind of like, oh, I don't know what this is going to be like. What do we say? What do we do? And he sat down and he just kind of exhaled and he goes, well, I got to do it again. Oh my God. Yeah. After all of the things that had just happened to him, after all of it, he said he had to do it again because he really said, I'm not done with what I want to do for this country. And I thought that was incredible to see that he knew the day he left office that he was going to try again to come back and do what was right for the United States of America. It's incredible. And look, I know him as a father-in-law. I know him as a grandfather. My kids absolutely adore him. In fact, one of the greatest moments, I think, of their life was when I was in the other room, and of course, TV's always on in our house, and they go, Mom, come in here. Grandpa's working at McDonald's. That's it. They're sold on that. I mean, he's the greatest. And about 2 days ago, I got a text from him. I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning, because we're hustling out there, guys. We're not sleeping. I hope nobody's sleeping for the next 72 hours, okay? And I had a text from him, and he had texted me. It was like 2:17 a.m. And I was like, oh, so I wrote him back, and he immediately responded to me. I was like, oh my gosh, he's awake? Wait, this guy isn't sleeping? And then after, we go back and forth for a few minutes, and he goes, okay, honey, now go to bed, please. Like, he's still a father-in-law. And I said, I'm not going to bed. I gotta go out there and win an election for you. But he's the greatest. I'm so proud to call myself his daughter-in-law, and I can tell you, I would never have gone out there the first time in 2016 and spoken on behalf of a man. I didn't know anything about politics, but I knew his character, I knew his heart, and I knew who he was as a person, and that's what I started going out there and talking to people about. Obviously, we got a little lesson on politics, so I'm a little brushed up these days, but he is one of the greatest people I've ever known, and I could not be more honored to be part of his family.
I just want to mention one thing about that, because we were just talking about this earlier, and we were talking about how hard he's been working. As I said, I saw him in Phoenix just the other night, Thursday night. He was late getting there because he was somewhere else, and I think he was in New Mexico, and then he came to Phoenix, and he finished at 10:30, and at about 10:50, I swear, he goes, I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a great time. Look, take this into account for your own life and try and picture some of these scenarios. The things that are meant for you give you energy, and when you're in alignment, when you're telling the truth, right, time disappears. When you're not in alignment, and when you're not speaking your truth, and when you're not happy with what you're doing, or with yourself, or the integrity of it all, it drains you. You can imagine, right? Everyone's had those scenarios where they think, this is exhausting. And then you do something else that could be twice the work or time, and you feel energized and almost high from it. You're like, you're just elevated. That's where he's at. That's the only explanation for someone that's nearly 80 years old to be doing what he's doing. I was tired. He was energized. It was amazing. It's truly phenomenal. I just think it speaks to his truth and integrity and how in alignment he is with what he's saying and what he wants to do. It's all in alignment, and that shows with his energy.
He's also just an animal. I'll just say that.
He's a different
I'm like,
species.
God, he's an animal. I see him, I'm exhausted, and I turn on the TV, and he's still on. It's still happening. He's an animal.
He is a different species. I think he is working so hard all the time, and we'll do 3 different events in one day. We'll leave Palm Beach at 7 in the morning. We get back at 2 at night, and he's watching the news on Trump Force One at volume 100, as we all know. Never stops. It's never quiet. He's constantly well-read. He's always the most well-read person in the room, understanding what is going on in this country, and that's why he's such a great political leader, because he gets what all of you are feeling at home and the issues that are happening in our country. Governor Sanders, you were White House press secretary in the first administration. You were also in a very good one at that. You had little children at the time. Share a story with the audience about working for Donald Trump as a working mother in arguably the most high-pressure job in the world.
I hope that may be the toughest job I ever had. But it was also the most amazing and rewarding experience. And certainly, very good point about there's no one who reads and sees and consumes more information, which is one of the things that makes him a great leader. It was not abnormal to get a text from him at or a call at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then again at 4:30, and you answer the phone. He's like, have you seen the news? I'm like, no, I haven't seen anything. I was asleep. And somehow he had just a tremendous amount of energy and still does. But one of the things that I think that so many people miss about President Trump is that softer side. And Lara, you mentioned how you have seen that in him as a father-in-law, to the grandfather to your kids, and I got to experience that on a regular basis. I spent 2.5 years working in the White House, and when I took on the job as the White House press secretary, as the very first mom, and only the 3rd woman to ever have that job. And when I started at the White House, my kids were 5, 3, and 1. I often joke, but I think it's actually serious. I I went to the White House to get a break because it was actually easier than being at home trying to help raise our kids. But I got to see that side of the president. One of probably the most vivid moments in my 2.5 years, and there are certainly hundreds and hundreds of memories and incredible moments getting to watch the president lead. But I'd had a particularly rough few weeks. My family had been kicked out of a restaurant that turned into a national news story. I had been attacked time and time again for my appearance. I had been called by an MSNBC host vile, not even human, unfit to be a parent. And it wasn't a really fun time during that process. But we were doing great things, and I loved getting to do the job that I had. And we were getting ready to go into a pretty intense negotiation that the president was in the midst of with a world leader. And we're walking in, the president should be focused on nothing else but the meeting that he's about to step into. He knows that he needs to walk out of there with a deal, and that should be the only thing on his mind. And we're getting ready to step in the room, he goes, "Stop for a second." I was like, okay. I'm thinking, am I about to get fired? I stop, he turns me, and he looks me directly in the eye, and he says, "Sarah, I need you to know something." He goes, "You're smart, you're beautiful. The only reason they attack you is because you're good at your job." And then he slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Now let's get back to work." He may have used a couple of 4-letter words in there too, but we'll let that slide. But it was the president of the United States, who had infinitely more important things to worry about than me, that stopped to make sure I was okay and that empowered me to do my job and keep fighting. When the left and the other side was relentlessly attacking me and trying to tear me down, it was Donald Trump who built me up and gave me the confidence I needed to keep fighting and keep doing my job. That's why we need him in the White House, because this is a person who cares about the people who he's serving. He cares about the people around him, and he's going to keep fighting, and he wants you to fight alongside him. But no one will be tougher and have more endurance and more energy and more fight in them than he does. I mean, the fact that he took a bullet, stood back up, put his hand in the air, should give every American from coast to coast confidence in this man to do the job.
You know, honestly, when he put his hand up in the air, I was watching him on TV, and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." I could see that he was doing that to make us feel better. Didn't you? That his heart knew that the American people needed to be reassured that he was okay. I mean, I don't cry very often, but I cried because I could see in his heart he wanted to reassure America that he was okay. And that's why he was so determined to stand up and to walk off, and with the shoes on. He wanted his shoes on before he walked off the stage. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And that's why I love him so much. I'll never forget the first time he met my mom. And it was after we had gone through 2020. And if you remember during 2020 and COVID, when I was making the decisions in South Dakota that I was making to keep our state open and things, I was getting attacked every night on the national news and by everybody.
Kudos to you for
But
doing
they,
that. Incredible.
But and he called me often to tell me, "You're making the best decisions for your people." But I remember he met my mom after that, and I said, "Mr. President, this is my mom. Her name's Corinne, and she just loves you dearly." And of course, my mom was crying. And he hugged her, and then he said to her, "It must be so hard being her mom." And my mom goes, "Yes, it is." And so then they kept talking about, and she goes, "She's not mouthy or anything, but they make her look like she's mouthy on TV." And he goes, no, she's a nice girl, but I know it's hard on moms." And like, he recognized that sometimes for us as candidates or as leaders, or, you know, as people who are sitting up and speaking all the time, it's hard on us, but it's harder on our families a lot of times, because they're at home and they're hearing people say things about you that just aren't true and that they know aren't true and they can't do anything about it. So those are the moments where you get to see his heart, and that he's always thinking about someone else in those situations and checking in with them to make sure they're okay.
Tulsi, you came from the other side, and there are so many lies about Donald Trump, not just politically, but who he is as a person. So now that you've gotten to know him personally, what's the greatest misconception that you saw from the media that you know is just simply not true now?
I mean, you've heard these incredible stories, that they like to say, well, Donald Trump is only for Donald Trump. But that was one of the first things that I experienced when I was starting to go and to work with him just over these last few months, that when he would walk into a room where there is business to be done, his very first question was, do you have something to drink? To everyone in the room, his staff included, have they fed you? And if not, it was immediately, all right, we got to get some food in here. This is what's good. Here's what I think you should eat, before actually getting down to doing the work. And I think that's really both what I've experienced in my own version of some of the things that you guys have talked about is really what a caring person he is. The other misconception that the media tells you is that it's very hard to work with him and for him, because he's not going to listen to anybody, and he's only going to do what he wants to do. I've experienced the exact opposite, that when sitting with a group of people, he's asking sincere questions, and he's listening to those answers. And I even found that he was asking questions sometimes to test someone in the room to see if they were just telling him what he wanted to hear, what they thought he wanted to hear, or are they actually going to tell him the truth, even though that answer may be an answer that disagrees with his view or his position. And to me, that can be rare in leaders at any level, who really do want to know, how do you really feel? Tell me why you think the way that you do, so that he can make the best informed decision. Obviously, he's going to make the decision that he feels is best for the country and that feels right for him. But I found him to be incredibly collaborative and encouraging people, always asking, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What if we do this? What if we do that? And I have really grown to respect him tremendously. I kind of came and endorsed him because I believe in his policies, but really getting to know him as a person, I love being around him. I really love working with him, and I really respect his approach and leadership style. I've been around a lot of leaders, both in politics as well as in the military, who have shown me what a bad leader is and how not to be. I've experienced the exact opposite with President Trump. And I think the last thing I'll say on this that is really important is the fact that he has assembled a team of people in this campaign, not only to help him get elected, but to help him govern after we get him elected, from all different backgrounds. Doesn't matter your political party, doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree on every issue. When you have Elon Musk and Bobby Kennedy and myself and Danica Patrick and so many other people coming together, he is demonstrating this unifying leadership that I know that people across the country are so hungry for, who are tired of the extremes and the partisan bickering and it's blue team versus red team. President Trump is saying this is about America. It's about all of us coming together and recognizing we're not going to agree on everything, nor should we. We can have and must have this vibrant debate and discourse of ideas on how we best solve the challenges that we face. The thing that we need to come together around are the fundamental principles of our founding documents, our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution, and stand firmly together as Americans on that ground, and together committed toward this mission of serving the American people and making this country, yes, great again, and as Danica said, greater than it's ever been.
But Tulsi, when you brought up the food, he does ask always if, do you have something to drink? Do you have some food? He's also such a dad sometimes that I forget.
That's true.
Anytime I'm anywhere with him and I'm departing in a different way, if he knows somebody else is driving me in their car, he's always like, okay, you make sure she gets where she's going. And if he knows that Eric and I are driving ourselves, he'll go, okay, make sure you drive slow, honey, okay? I'm like, God, he's still such a dad. I love it. It's very endearing.
Indeed.
You know, I know he was giving people jobs, and he actually offered me one when I met him the other night. He's like, we need to get you a job. I was like, whoa, we're moving really fast here. But I'd be okay with some sort of like deputy of transportation, adjust some speed limits maybe. Using your blinker, that's an option, right? Yield signs instead of stop signs, I don't know. I could just drive him around too, that's fine.
I think you're qualified for that job.
We probably
We'll
could
have to
use
talk
a
to
new
Secret
Secret
Service.
Service director. You could be the Secret Service director and make sure he gets somewhere safe, right?
Well, he
We need
definitely
one of
wouldn't
those.
have what happened at Butler
That's
happen
right.
if it was me.
I think you'd fix that place, wouldn't you?
I'd just be the getaway car. Let's just keep it simple. Let's stay in my wheelhouse.
Well, I think we should go down and give our closing argument, starting with you, Danica, about why everyone should get out and vote for President Trump. So take it away.
You know, it's something Lara said earlier. It's that he doesn't need this job. He wants this job. Look how many years he's put into this and coming back again. He cares about people. He cares about you. He cares about this country. I mean, how can you not when he's built the wealth and the prestige and the reputation that he has? Don't forget, everybody did love him, right? Even Rosie O'Donnell.
True.
So really, I think that is the thing that hits home. That's why he's the man for the job, because he wants this job. He doesn't need this job. And if somebody is willing to stand in the line of fire willingly after getting shot, then that's the person that you want standing up for you. They always say, like, you want the person next to you, want somebody that you could go to war with. You could go to war with him. And on top of it, he'll end the wars, because there was no new wars with him either. And then we can maybe keep some of that money back here and take care of, like, certain things that happen in Maui with the fire, or Asheville with the hurricane. That's the stuff that we need that money for. So end wars, but he's the one you want to go to war with, because he's the one that's going to stand up for you because he cares about you.
To me, the most important qualification that we should look for in any leader who's asking to be a public servant, but especially in the President of the United States, is that they're looking out for the American people first. We've seen over the last 4 years under the Harris-Biden regime that they are looking out for everyone else but the American people. We've talked a lot about many different examples of how that's the case. But what I appreciate about President Trump's leadership, and this is a message that Bobby Kennedy and I have been traveling across the country and sharing with voters who may not have voted for Donald Trump before, who may have been lifelong Democrats, people who have never voted before in their lives and are looking for a reason why they should vote for President Trump. The leadership that he has displayed, not only as president in this country on every metric, proving a record of success, comparing and contrasting with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's record of failure, he has proven that he is a leader and a president who's actually bringing our country together, who has the courage to stand up against the Washington swamp elite establishment, the neocons and the warmongers and the military-industrial complex. He is willing to stand up to anyone that he needs to have our back, to put the interests of the American people first. This is the kind of change that we need in our country right now. And to me, this is the kind of change that can truly be transformational and that can reignite that spark in the hearts of so many people who feel unheard, who feel left behind, who feel hopeless, that this is our time to ensure we have a government of, by, and for the people, and that we have a president who's looking out for us.
I want to start by saying thank you to each one of you for spending your evening. There are a lot of places that you could be, and you chose to be here. And I think it's because you understand the same thing that Donald Trump does. And that's that our country is at a crossroads, and we need a leader who is going to fight and defend our country. And think one of the most important qualifications in our president is somebody who loves America and loves the people of this country. And there are very few people that love America the way that Donald Trump does. In the time that I spent working for him, I got to travel literally all over the world, and one of my favorite stories to tell because I think it encapsulates this president so well. It was Christmas night of 2018, and we had just finished celebrating that holiday with our kids and our family when I had to leave my own family's Christmas. Unable to tell them where I was going that night because the place I was going with the president was so dangerous. They didn't want anybody in the world to know he was going to be on the ground, not even for a few hours. Yet we have people who live there every day, people like Tulsi, who have served, who have sacrificed, who have put everything on the line. And this president was going to thank them on Christmas for their service. We got on Air Force One, and 12 and a half hours later, we landed in the war-torn part of Western Iraq. And none of those soldiers knew that he was coming. And when he walked into this dining hall that was packed full of hundreds of troops, you had people from every political party, every race, every religion, every part of the country represented in that room. And when the President of the United States stepped into the room, they chanted in perfect unity over and over and over again, USA, USA, USA. It was an absolutely perfect picture of what makes America so incredible. Men and women willing to sacrifice everything so that you and I get to enjoy the freedom and the incredible opportunity to call ourselves Americans. And the president was walking around the room thanking each of the individual troops, and one of the young soldiers in the back of the room yelled to him, he said, "Mr. President," he said, "I re-enlisted in the military because of you." And the president said, "And son, I'm here because of you." Incredible moment to see between these two people who were serving in a very different way, but willing to do what it takes to make sure that not just each one of us, but that our kids and our grandkids get the ability to grow up in an America that still means something, an America that the world desperately needs. This world needs a strong America, and we will get that under a President Trump. We have not had it over the last 4 years, but we will get it back on Tuesday, and as Danica said, it will be better than it has ever been before, and that is why it is so important for us to show up, and not just to vote. While that is absolutely critical, and that's how you win elections, take your friends, tell the people that you know, make sure that every single person that you have contact with shows up and they vote for Donald Trump, because America and the world are counting on you. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for supporting President Trump.
Yes, we do. We do. Listen, when I married into my husband's family, about 80% of them were Democrats. And then I take their name and I run for Congress as a Republican. So if you can imagine, and that year it happened to be one of the top 5 races in the nation. It was extremely contentious and ugly. And here this woman in their family that took their name is running as a Republican. And I will tell you that today, almost all of them are Republicans. And but they're not Republicans because we blew each other up and screamed at each other. They're Republicans because we all sat down and we talked across the dinner table at Thanksgiving or Christmas and talked about things, and we loved each other. So all of you sitting here today, what I'm going to remind you is to be talking to people. You all have people in your lives that you don't talk to anymore because of politics, right? You've got people that you work with, maybe even people that you go to church with, people in your family, and you are all thinking, how many of you can think of somebody right now in your life that you don't talk to about politics because it just gets too ugly, right? I just need you to get over it. I would have never dreamed I would see a country change like ours has changed in the last 4 years. I would have never dreamed that we would see our constitutional freedoms threatened like they have been under the Harris and Biden administration. We are watching people use fear to control people. We're watching the government use fear to promote an agenda. And it's an agenda of socialism and Marxism that is designed to remake America. Listen, let's not lose this country on our watch. When our founders gave us this country, they took on a fight with the meanest, most well-equipped, well-armed military in the entire world. And they did it with their personal rifles and their muskets. And they went just because they wanted to be free. We have no idea what kind of sacrifices they made for us. When they signed the Declaration of Independence, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. We haven't had that much asked of us right now in this. In fact, Benjamin Franklin, when he signed it, said we must all hang together, or most assuredly, we will all hang separately. They made a commitment to give us this gift, the greatest experiment in human history. And there's no place else that's better than America on earth. And we all have families, we have kids, we have grandkids, that we want to give them what we had the chance to enjoy. I've got a little granddaughter that's 3, Miss Addie, and I want her to have every opportunity that I had as a woman growing up in this country and running businesses and having a family and being successful. So let's decide today that we're not going to lose it on our watch. Go out and start talking to people again, asking them who they're going to vote for and why. When you go to the gas station tonight to fill your car with gas, talk to the person at the pump next to you. Say, who are you voting for and why? If you go get groceries the next few days, in the checkout line, ask the checkout person who they're voting. They can't go anywhere, right? It's not like they could storm away. Ask them who they're voting for and why. You might say one thing that makes them think about this election differently and makes them think about something when they go home and start talking to their family members that might make all the difference in the world. And the last thing I'll ask you is to be happy. If you're happy, people will be drawn to you. They'll want to be around you. Nobody wants to be around a crabby, scowling, screaming person and say, well, I want to be more like them. No, they want to be around cheerful people who are filled with a hope, and we have a hope because President Donald J. Trump is in this race, and he's going to win. So leave here tonight and go talk to those folks.
Last but not least,
Well, I think we all feel this. I don't need to say any more about how important this election is, but it is. It's critical, it's crucial, and it's vital that this country heads back in the right direction. And I do believe that one day people will look back and say, what is it that you did in the year 2024? How is it that you saved this country? Governor Noem just gave such a good synopsis of what happened so that we got to live in the United States of America. There were people who gave their lives, and it's continued to happen ever since they founded this country. And, you know, when I took this role as co-chair of the RNC, I knew how much time it would mean away from my kids, my family, and I honestly wasn't sure I wanted this, but of course I have a very persuasive father-in-law, you know that. But I realized, looking at my 2 kids, that I had to do it for them, because it's not about any of us in this room. It's about them. It's about the future generations of this country. And don't just go out and talk to people. You can definitely do that too, but you can probably also think of one person who you know who may not go vote in this election. And on Monday, I want you to start calling these people. Actually tonight, take out your phone, text them, call them, whatever it is you need to do, and say, hey, Tuesday, you want to come have a cup of coffee with me and you want me to drive you to go vote? Because who's already voted in here? Okay, I love that.
Awesome.
We're absolutely killing it in the early vote. You guys know that. Across the country. Yeah. But we've got to turn up big on Tuesday. And so I want you to reach out to somebody or multiple people. I don't know how many seats you have in your car, but pack it full and get them out to vote. And I just want to say that we have 3 days left of history. We're all right now part of history, guys. There will never be another candidate ever like Donald J. Trump. There's never going to be another one who can work at a McDonald's, who can drive a garbage truck truck to a rally in Wisconsin. There will never be another person like him in politics. He has changed the face of politics as we know it. And for everyone out there, whether you love Donald Trump or not, you probably started paying closer attention to politics on June 15th of 2015 when a billionaire businessman from New York City came down a golden escalator and announced he was running for president. And so guys, really over the next 3 days, take this in. There's never going to be another time like this in American history. We're all living through it. And on Tuesday, I want us to have the greatest celebration possible. Donald Trump wrote a couple of books. He wrote The Art of the Deal. He also wrote The Art of the Comeback. And we are poised, not just for the greatest comeback for him, but greatest comeback for this country imaginable in anybody's wildest dreams. So get out there Tuesday, get people out to the polls to vote, and make sure we take back this country and make America great again. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for being here tonight. We love you, Georgia.